On this episode of Flea Market Rescue, we're going to take this old, out-of-date, stained-up buffet and turn it into a farmhouse showpiece. So stay tuned. A little while back, I picked up this beautiful buffet, but as you can see, it definitely needed a lot of work. It had some staining, it was scratched up, some of the veneer was missing on the bottom as well as the side. I picked it up for $75, and I think that's a great deal, but it did need a lot of work in order to look like this farmhouse showpiece. So first, I started by sanding. I couldn't find my mask, so I just ended up covering my mouth and my nose with the hoodie I was wearing. You should always wear a mask when you're sanding. All these particles and things are coming up off this old furniture, so you really just kind of don't want all that in your lungs. Okay, so the other day we had sanded this, and I recently put some wood filler here so that we could just kind of patch the veneer, and there's a little on the side. For the veneer that was damaged, I took this plastic wood. It hardens very hard and it's the perfect fix. I used that with the putty knife and I just filled in the spots that were missing, and as you'll see, you can't even tell. So I'm going to finish sanding the front of the drawers and the doors, also what we patched in the side, and then we'll move on to paint. I noticed that the top needed a little more sanding, so I sanded that and then went on to the sides. Next, it was on to the hardware. You always want to make sure you're not going to lose this stuff, so just put the screw back in there, put it somewhere safe, or else you're going to be looking for new hardware. I finished by taking off all the rest of the hardware, and then I sanded the front as well as the drawers. Okay, you know what time it is. It's time for paint. Here we go. See how this comes out. I sprayed the top and even had to go over it a couple times. Then I worked my way up to the front. I sprayed where the drawers go, and then I worked my way to the doors. For me, it's always rewarding to see how the front's going to look, how the doors are going to look, and it just looks like it's all starting to come together. I finished the sides, and then I moved on to the other door, and then finished the other side. You can already tell this is going to be gorgeous. Later on, I did a second coat on the entire thing, and then once that dried, I took a sander and lightly sanded in areas to bring out some of the detail. The next morning, I took this little jar of paint. It's by SLOAN, and it's French linen. I dipped the bristles into the paint, and I also dipped the brush into water. and I went horizontally across the whole top of the piece. Sometimes you have a little too much paint on your brush and it'll make this little blob. All you have to do is just dip your brush into water and then you can kind of scratch it out and then it'll just become a little more translucent. After I painted it horizontally, I then went vertically with the brush and did like a little crisscross type thing. And that just kind of hides some of the imperfections because, again, we're working with an older piece of furniture. I've used this brush quite a bit, so bristles are kind of falling out, and I'm just trying to get them off of the paint. Now you can start seeing what the top looks like. It's getting a lot of nice layering to it, which is great. And then we're going to take a little piece of sandpaper and just kind of even that out a little. So you want to just take your sandpaper and you want to go horizontally, you want to go vertically, and just kind of even that out so that there's not splotchy parts, and then it just looks more congruent. Once I was done with the top, I moved to the side and I did the same thing with the gray. I went horizontally, I went vertically, and just kind of shaded that nicely. Now it was time to move on to the beautiful legs. I started by dry brushing some of the gray onto the leg, and it was just a little bit too splotchy, so I got the water out and just did my little technique to give it some more detail. After that, I quickly moved to the door, and I did all around where the arch was with that gray. I went back in with a little heavier hand with the gray and just tried to get into the creases of the arch just to shadow it a little. This is more like a dry brush technique because I really didn't use water. I just kind of went through the arch and, really rubbed it in good, and it just gives it more definition by doing that. Once I finished dry brushing this with gray, I went in with sandpaper just to take a little off, and as you can see, there's just a lot of great definition, and it looks like a lot of layering. It gives it more like an old type cathedral look. As you can see, it gets really kind of dark and looks a little dirty, so you want to just go back in there with some white on your brush, like I did over here. See how I lined it up in the corner? I have a little more white on my brush. I'm just gonna get right in here and scrub that in a little. See how the outside still has that nice definition, but the inside has like a little bit of a glow. Kind of what you want to do so the whole piece doesn't look like all dirty. I then finished the top by whitewashing it. I dipped my paint in white and water and just went back and forth across it, just lightening it up a little. Then I took out my hand sander and I sanded parts that had a lot of detail on them just to expose a little of the wood underneath and just make it really stand out, make it look like it was an old worldly piece. Now it was time for the hardware. I took this chalk paint and sprayed it on the hardware. Once it was dry, I put it back onto the buffet. I know I probably should have waited and waxed it first, but I was so excited I could not wait to see what it would look like all together. Using SLOAN clear wax, I waxed the front, the doors, and the top. Using a clean cloth, I rubbed in the wax and it turned out beautiful. If you like this episode of Flea Market Rescue and you want to see more episodes like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. I'm Kelly Sherry, and this was Flea Market Rescue.